everyone, and welcome back to Dev Show. This is our 29th episode of Dev Show, and my name is Sherry. I'm one of your co-hosts together with a good colleague of mine, Rasmus. Hi, Rasmus. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks. Just same as usual. Only difference today is the sun is shining, right? And I'm wearing a cap. Not usually doing that, but how about yourself? How are you?
I'm fine, and I don't have the cat that you have. Where did you get it?
Can't tell you. But anyway, the quick listener and viewer has also maybe experienced that we are here 1 hour earlier today, and we're gonna be that next week as well because they are going on daylight saving time 2 hour, 2 weeks before us in Denmark in the US. So for us to be able to stream to Learn TV, then we need to go live 1 hour earlier.
That's today, and today actually we are back with a very popular topic, which is about the security in DevOps. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you are looking forward to get to know our speaker and start the talk. But before that, I need to remind you that during the session, we don't have a question and answer. We save all of the question for the end. And I need you all, to write your question. Doesn't matter from Twitch, Learn TV, or from YouTube that you are watching us. Please type it in the comment box, and we are going to highlight it for the speaker later on, and then he's going to answer that to you. And you also can talk to each other during that chat. You can then that is going to give you a more feeling of being part of a community, part of the conference, and like good old days that you could have a chit chat. You can do it in the chat as well. But while you are typing there, I really want you all to familiarize yourself with us with our code of conduct, which Cosmos shared the link here. It's pretty simple. We just want you to be mindful and respectful of each other. We're also going to give you all an Azure Heroes Learner badge. I'm going to share the link in the chat, and also we're going to talk about it at the end of the show. Plus, we are also going to share the link for the feedback form because that is really important for us to know that what do you want to know and then how do you want us to get improved. I'm going to share that one in the chat as well. And one of you that if you submit the feedback form is going to get some prize from us, swag box, a very cool one.
Woohoo! Swags.
Maybe it has a cap in it. Nobody knows. So
you never know, right?
Yes. So with that, Rasmus, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the topic today.
Yeah, so you lifted a little bit about what is going to talk about, and maybe also because you have been doing DevOps all day with the Cloud Secrets DevOps conference. But we are going to learn in this session from Abdel secure deployments to the cloud using Azure DevOps as well. So I just read his agenda and he's going to share more, but we are going to go all the way from getting an introduction, learning about governance, SPNs, also secure production environments, access connections, etc. So there's going to be a lot of good stuff in this, all the way from the start, the beginners, and also if you are a little bit more advanced. So that's going to be amazing. Yeah.
So maybe we can have Abdel on the stage now.
So. That would be a good idea. Hi, Abdel. Welcome to Dev Show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for hosting. It's amazing and it's a pleasure to be here today. Looking forward to it.
Thanks for joining us. What a nice background you have, actually.
I'm at Proactive Studio today, so it's pretty nice here. Yeah.
Okay, that is great. And so, Abdel, you are working as a principal architect at Proactive. Maybe you can tell us a little bit what do you do daily at work?
Yeah, so I work as a principal architect, as you mentioned, with Proactive. Proactive is mainly a consulting house for Microsoft technologies. I'm specialized with Azure services, so I go to the different customers, try to help them build integration projects or migration projects. and it's pretty nice actually. I like consulting customers. I like help them to figure their ways and how to move to the cloud. It's an amazing journey, and it's full of challenges, but also exciting challenges. Apart from that, I also try to spread the knowledge sharing and raise the spirit about sharing knowledge and utilizing the best practices and use community code and so on. So we try to arrange internal events for sharing knowledge, and we do it from our studio here. So it's nice to have also a facilitator to work with. It's absolutely nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a very good topic and very high on the agenda right now, building this learning culture, and especially now that everybody is home, right? So do you have any tips and tricks, any nuggets that you can share for other companies and other communities? What works for you in that regard?
Well, I can start by saying it depends from one setup to another. At Proactive, we have a big spectrum of technologies, so we also try to choose the topics that would interest most of the people, and we try to create like monthly events or bi-monthly events where we share knowledge, where we talk about the different customers or the different solutions we have been part of, maybe a new technology we are doing, and we also try to make it fun some way. Like next week, I'm trying to announce a fun event where we will be doing like a mystery room, but online. So our developers can go into a theme where they are trying to beat the hacker who took our systems and try to, through different puzzles, break through the mystery room. So we try to make it both fun and also technical.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. We need to get your learnings on the back end of that, because that sounds like something that other companies could use as well.
Totally, I'm happy to send the links. We will try it next week, so hopefully it's going to be a good experience.
To get your feedback.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome.
Okay, so I believe that maybe we should get started, because I'm pretty sure that people are waiting to learn from
Totally.
you.
Yeah. So I will share my presentation here. I have a quick agenda about what we're going to speak about. So mainly today I'm speaking about the governance and Azure Cloud in the Azure technologies. I see a lot of customers where we speak to them. They are used to on-premise way of working, where we have a server or a system admin who's mainly responsible for doing packages and deploying, and they have some established workflow where they go through it, where somebody approve a release and signs that this approval is now this package is now ready to go to production, and all this is a new field if you are moving from on-premise to the cloud, and if you are also utilizing Azure DevOps, because Azure DevOps is, of course, is a big tool and have a lot of tools in it, and it's very powerful. But you also need to understand how to set it up so you can also have the right governance. If you are an organization that cares about security, that cares about governance and how you deploy your technology, you need to kind of set up things correctly from the start, so you ensure that you have the same process in place. So yeah, in the agenda today, we'll be speaking about segregation of duties, how to apply governance. This will happen through the technology or the tools which we call service connections together with SPNs. And I'll just walk you through it through demos. So I don't have many slides, fortunately, it's just two, and we will just be going through demos all the sessions from now on. I created this reference diagram. Basically, I'm just trying to make it easy for people to relate between what used to work on premise and how it's now set up in the cloud. So I just have to the left here, we have the on-premise setup. And back in the days, we used to have a package, a solution that we need to deploy somewhere, and that's sometimes it's through our environment. So we have the server. And in the old days, it used to be the system admin, which I gave him the king figure because he had full control, he knows everything, and he's a trusted advisor of the organization. He usually uses his credentials or the secrets, username and password, to take the package and log into the server and do the installation. So this is like the very basic. Of course, you can combine that with automation. You can combine that with pipelines. But I'm just speaking about very back in the old days. It was 4 different components: a person responsible, secrets that we use, a package that we deploy to the server. So how does that work in terms of the cloud today? How do we get this setup to work in the cloud? So if we look into one-to-one component in this diagram, the server is actually the cloud. Azure give us all the nice services that we can utilize, and basically our code and our solutions are hosted in the cloud. So we don't have server anymore. And depending on your solution, if you're doing code as an infrastructure or if you're doing C# code, it really depends. But in this example here, I'm going to demo today, it will just be an ARM template. Basically, I'm creating a storage account that I would like to push to our Azure technologies. And then the interesting part comes, the system admin and the service principal. So we would like to not have a person responsible, but instead an automation, a process where we can see audit logs, where we can see the history of our deployments, where we can track the full picture and also see what kind of feature or bug fixes did we just release. So for that, we're going to use Azure DevOps, which is obviously a good complement to Azure services. Both of them work very nice together and they have a good integration. And for the identity or for the credentials, we will use what is called SPN, or a service principal. A service principal is basically an app that you create in your Azure Active Directory. This app, you can give it permissions over your resources. So it's kind of impersonating someone. You're giving a special app permissions over your resources, and then you will use this app, and through it, you'll be able to deploy your solutions to your environments. And I believe this is also a good setup because you don't depend on a specific person or a service account. You're just creating an app, and you can anytime remove the access of this app or even delete it. So you have full control over your environment. So without further ado, let's just take this in action and walk you through it. And of course, as you guys say, that if you have any questions, just ping me through it. I will go ahead and go to my Azure portal and give you and let's have an overview of the first component here, the service principal. What is it? So I will go to Active Directory. Okay, this is not the right browser. I'll just go to the right tenant. Yeah. So if I go to the Active Directory here, in the Active Directory, of course, not everyone in the organization have full access to the Active Directory. So you need to have the right permissions to be able to create your service principal or your app. Fortunately, I'm the admin here in my own private tenant, so I can see all the different settings of my Active Directory, what kind of users, groups, and so on. But what is the interesting part here is the app registrations, where we will create the SPN or the secrets, the credentials that we'll be using. So under app registrations, you can see that I have created 2 apps, SOD Dev SPN and SOD Prod SPN. So I created 2 credentials, one for my dev environment and one for my production. I'm separating the 2 environments. I'm utilizing 2 different accounts to access the 2 different environments. Creating application is straightforward. If you have access to do it, you basically give it a name, and of course, you need to follow the organization naming conventions. And then I will not walk you through creating the app, but I can show you the properties of the app that is already created here. So one of the interesting properties about the app is that it gets an application ID, an object ID. An object ID is basically your identity in the Active Directory. Every user have an ID in the Active Directory. So this is a way to tell you, okay, it's exactly almost like a normal user, but it's just an app. You also see that we have a secret, and we will be utilizing those properties to impersonate our pipelines to deploy to our production. But let's go ahead first and see what our environments look like. So moving back to the slides, we talked about the service principal here. We have created an Active Directory app. I already pre-cooked that. And we are talking now about our resources. So if I go to resource groups, you can see that I have other resource groups, but the interesting ones are those two resource groups. I have a dev resource group and a prod resource group. And under one of them, I have a storage account created. For demoing purposes, I can just delete this resource for now so that we can see that they are being created through the pipeline. But meanwhile, it's also interesting to see what kind of access, who have access to this resource group. So if I go under access control and go under role assignments, you would see that this app, the SOD Dev SPN, have contributor rights to this resource group. So anyone who is impersonating this app or SPN can actually deploy stuff to a resource group and can have access, a contributor access to this resource group, so he can manage and create resources under this resource group. So this is kind of our password or our entry to our resources. We have the credentials created that will give us enough permissions, and of course, you can change those permissions. You can always change the access types, and you can mix and match. So if you have multiple SPNs maybe that needs access to this resource group, you can give a token or SPNs to your different teams, and you can limit them or manage their permissions on your environments. Same goes to production. Production have the same kind of setup, except that I'm using the production SPN. I hope I'm not going fast and it's clear the picture so far, but yeah. So let's talk about the king in the future. Who will be able to deploy to Azure or our resources? Basically, all my code is located in Azure DevOps in this team. I have my repos created that's creating my storage account. I will not dive through the code now. It's just pre-cooked. And I would like to create the tunnel. I would like to create a bridge between Azure and Azure DevOps. I would like, through my pipelines in Azure DevOps, connect through a bridge to Azure Cloud and deploy my services. This bridge, what I call, is a service connection. So actually, in Azure DevOps, you can establish service connections, which will take you through which can integrate with different providers, and definitely Azure is one of them. So if I go to my project settings and go under service connections, you can see that there is already 2 service connections or 2 bridges. Let's call them bridges now to simplify things. But just to have an idea about how to create a service connection, you can go here and create a new service connection, and you can see that Azure DevOps give you actually a set of tools that you can build. You can connect your Azure DevOps tenant to all kind of environments, GitHub, Docker registry, and others. But we are mainly interested in Azure Resource Manager because I'm deploying my resources to Azure Resource Group. So I can go ahead and create next. Then here it's asking me, okay, do you already have a service principal that you would like to manually hook into Azure DevOps, or do you want us to create a service principal for you automatically? If you choose this option, actually, the whole setup of creating the apps in the Active Directory would happen to you out of the box through the UI. Again, if you have the right permissions and if you have the right setup established. I personally like to do it the manual way, because then I can control the naming conventions of my SPNs. So in my Active Directory, I'm using a special naming convention. If you choose the automatic way, then you will get a probably unique generated name for your SPN. So going in manually, then you can select you can see that you have a set of metadata that you need to fill in. And basically, those metadata is things about your subscription. What is SPN ID? Remember, we talked that each application have an application ID. So basically, it's asking you which SPN are you trying to use. So I will give it the right GUID. I'll give it the service principal key, which is basically the secret. So if you go under secrets for the app, you can generate secrets and make the connection, establish the connection between Azure and Azure DevOps. So if let's check one of the already created, the dev connection. I can go ahead and edit. You can see that, yeah, it's grayed out, but just it can give you example. It's using my Azure subscription. It's using the right service principal ID, and then I added this key, the secret, and I connected it to my tenant. So the service connection is actually, again, your main bridge, your main way to connect your packages, your source code, your pipelines to your cloud environments. So let's actually go and see how that works. I created some pipelines using multi-stage YAML files. It's a good concept that we like it very much. I don't know the different audience backgrounds. There is classic pipelines, and there is now the multi-stage YAML pipelines. I'm using it. But if I look into the code of the stage environment, actually in my Azure pipeline, I have my code divided into two files, but you can see here that I'm actually referencing the service connection. In my pipeline, in my stage, I'm using the step to deploy to a storage account, and then I'm passing on the service connection from my parameters. And the service connection is just writing the name of the service connection you're trying to use. So far, we haven't spoke about governance. We haven't spoke about segregation of duties. We'll come back to this. I'm just walking you through first how to establish the connection, how to create the foundation in place, to set the foundation in place. So I can go to my pipelines now and trigger a new job. You can see that my pipeline consists of 3 different phases: build, dev, and production. Normally, you would have test and pilot, but for demoing purposes, I'm going directly from dev to production. I will do a new build based on my feature branch. And then it will take around 2 minutes. And then hopefully after that, you will see under the resource group, the dev resource group, a new storage account in place. So this is just a very, very simple light pipeline, but just to have the right setup in place, the connections and so on. So while this is actually running, I can explain how are we going to do segregation of duties, and how are we going to have the right governance and the right workflow with an approval process when we go to production. So as it is today, developers can just build, deploy to dev, and then it will go straight away to production. But since the only way for us to deploy from Azure DevOps to Azure through the service connection, what we call the bridge, if we set the right gates in this bridge, if we set the right approval and right security on this bridge, then we make sure that no one is crossing it unless he is actually approved. So we are actually utilizing the concept to also establish the security around it. So right now it is deploying to dev. So let's give it some time. But yeah, it's very automated, you can see, and we are using it on our daily jobs. Whenever now I have a customer and I'm working with him, and we just had a bug, we fix the bug, and then we can easily just through pipeline push to production, and as long as there's someone actually approving it. So yes, let's have a look. It's now deploying my ARM template, and soon we'll deploy to the storage account. So if we go back to our resource group and refresh, still not there. Okay, it's finishing. So hopefully after some caching, it will appear. Yes, so now you can see that we did establish the connection. Now we pushed a package from Azure DevOps to Azure. So the whole components here from this diagram is actually established. The foundation is there, and we now have the setup right. So far, maybe for some people, this is boring because they already know it. For some people, it's very interesting. I'm just trying to again reach out for all the audience. But next, in the next phase, we will go through how do we actually govern it? How do we make sure that this pipeline doesn't just go from dev to production as it is doing now. And I have, let's go to pipelines. Yeah, you can see there is already checks there. That wasn't the intention, so I'll just clear them. But you can see that now I actually not deploying because I had some gates already established. So let me clear those gates first, and then we talk them step by step. So I'll go to my service connection and go to approvals, and I will delete them so that we can create them together and understand what is the concept about. So if I let me see if I go back to my pipeline now that I removed the gates, if this will be approved or it will just still cache it. Okay, so now it's starting an actual deployment, and that is what you just saw is because I was preventing actually. So it was my governance working against me. I just removed the governance, and I will show you how to create the governance. If I go to the service connection, under the settings here, you'd see that as a dev branch, actually under this menu here, it have two interesting options. It have approvals and check, what we call the gate. So we have the bridge, and now we're setting the gates. And then we also have the security. Who have access to change those gates? Who have access to modify the service connection or even change the secrets of the service connection, delete it and do whatever with it. So let's have a look at the security groups. So out of the box, whenever you create a new service connection, all your endpoint administrators would have access to it. So that means an endpoint administrator, if I open the permissions in this tab, each Azure DevOps team have a set of groups created. So whenever you create a new Azure DevOps project, you have a lot of groups. And basically, there is an endpoint administrators group out of the box, and the members of those group have actually access to modify and govern the bridge, have access to change the security, change the gates, and so on. So if I go back to service connection, what I did for my dev environments, I like to enable my developers in the team. I like to give them a sandbox environment where they can try different stuff and edit stuff. So for that, I did actually give them contributor rights. So under security, now you can see that I gave all the contributors of my team access and security administrative rights over my service principal so that they can change stuff again under the dev environment only. You can see a set of levels for your security administrator are basically people who can change the security, change the gates, and even delete or modify. Users are people who can see it, utilize it, and can utilize it in their pipelines. Readers are basically can see it, but cannot really do much about it. So this is for my dev service principal. What about service connection? What about my production? So for production, I would like to tighten that. I would like not to give anyone access except for the right people. So under going too much, under security, I would like to remove the contributors. Save that, and then I would like to and then I would like to keep it only under endpoint administrator. This setup is different from one organization to another. Every organization have their roles, their different team players, and it really depends on your team how do you want like to set up. But it's very important to know that you actually have the possibility and you have the power to govern it and give the right people the right access. And it could be that on the tenant level, your Azure DevOps administrators are the only ones who have access to your service connection to production, who have access to modify the security around it. Of course, we need the developers to be able to push packages to production, but we want to disable them from changing the security around that. So so this is how I'm tightening the security, the governance part. In the service connection. This is, we talked about governance. Now let's talk about segregation of duties. How do we make sure that a developer cannot push their code to production. Now that they have the bridge, but there is no gates. So under again the same menu here, it's very interesting. You can see that you have approvals and checks. Basically, you are shown with different options. You have a lot of gates you can add. You can add for instance, a specific branch you don't want to deploy to production from a specific, unless it's coming from a specific branch. You don't want to deploy to production unless you check that your environment is healthy. You can do that by, for example, invoking a REST API in production, by pinging your services, by calling an Azure function first, making sure that everything is in place for our package to go through. But one of the most common and one of the very interesting ones are the approvals. So if I go ahead and select approvals, I can now say that no one is allowed to production except my proactive account approve it. This is my own tenant, but now I'm giving my proactive account an administrative rights. And I can actually say that even my proactive account cannot approve his own changes. So I cannot just log in from my proactive account and create code and push it to production because I have approval rights. If you uncheck this box, it will also make sure that someone else, even if your approval, it will make sure that someone else will look at your code, make sure that it's right and healthy and secure, and move it to production. This is very nice. I like it very much because it's very straight to the point. Like, you're creating the bottleneck. The bottleneck is basically your bridge and setting the gates in it. You have control over your environments. Your packages cannot be deployed to the resource group because no one have access, or intentionally your team doesn't have access to the resource group. It is only the SPN who have access. And then the service connection is utilizing that SPN, but with a governance around it and with approval process around it. So now let's go ahead and test it out. So just making sure everything in place. Approvals, that would be me from my proactive account, security in place. Let's go ahead now and trigger a new pipeline. And you can see that the last one actually worked because I removed it. I'll just go first to my resource group in production and remove the storage account so we can actually see it deployed through the pipeline this time. Deleting. Now I will go and run the pipeline again. I will take it from the feature branch, and then what I'm expecting is at this time it will build, it will push it to dev, and then it will stop or pause, waiting for an approval. Then we will see my gate happening in action, and it will only work if I log into my other account and then actually do the approval. So this will take 2 minutes more, but yeah, hopefully it will happen. But meanwhile, I think it's generally in DevOps you need to think ahead. You always need to prepare. So I saw some teams are actually just focused with developing, and the last thing they think about is actually where is our environments? How do we deploy our packages? Where is the security around it? Where is the governance? All this discussion is very important to take ahead of your establishing your projects. You need to be aware how you're deploying your packages and code and what is the setup with the organization. Because as I said, this setup here, I would recommend it to every organization. But again, every organization have its own security and its own flow. So you need to understand what is the setup, and using the features and the tools in Azure DevOps, I assure you that you will find a way to implement your organization policies in Azure DevOps. So now you can see it actually did deploy to dev, but then it's waiting for production. So let's go ahead and see what's going on. Okay, it's saying, okay, requirement approval from Abdel-Rahman. I cannot do it from this account here, but I'll just switch my code, and now I'm logged in as Abdel-Rahman from Proactive. I'll go to pipelines, and then I can see there is a pending approval, and now I can review it and say, okay, I think it's a good package. let's say demo good, and then I can actually approve it. The moment I click this button, now it will go ahead and trigger the production pipeline again, and it will push it through to my production resource group. So you can see it's very easy actually to implement an approval process. You have the bottleneck, you are making sure no one can cross it except the right guy approving it. And again, this could have been an Active Directory group. It could have been an Azure DevOps permissions group. So it doesn't need to be a specific person. It can be, you can also utilize the different groups. So it can be a set of people that you trust with this environment that are able to approve changes to it. So yes, this will hopefully push it to production soon. I can see some of the questions. How many of you use Azure DevOps at the team? It depends from one setup to another. I personally, whenever I'm working with a solution, I make sure that my team is actually using Azure DevOps and utilizing it. And of course, it depends on the team member size. You can always apply the right branching strategy. You can apply a pull requests and a code reviews. So you can also, depends on your team size, you can also utilize other areas of Azure DevOps to ensure the right practices and the right code quality. But again, it's different from one situation to another. So now it says it have deployed to production. Let's go ahead and refresh. Okay, hey, yes, now you can see my storage account has been created in production. It have went through. I think I have 10 more minutes. I would like to show you one more features quickly. If I go back to the service connection and go to the production service connection, I would like to add a new gate, which is basically I would like to only deploy from a specific branch. Before doing that, I would also like to show another or speak about another nice feature is business hours. So let's say you would like to make sure that you don't deploy within high traffic times, or you need to have a service window that you always deploy through. So you can even also configure a gate that makes sure that you only deploy within the service window you have. But yeah, for now, let's stick with the branching control. Now it's asking me, okay, you would like to allow deployments to production from a specific branch. And in this case, I would say yes, I will configure it so that it only takes it from the main branch. And speaking about the team size, if you're a big team, you don't want to overlap each other. So of course, using the right branching policy and so on. So right now I'm configuring it that only packages coming from the main branch would be deployed to production. Creating it. So now over my bridge, I have two gates. I have Abdel needs to approve it, the proactive account needs to approve it, and it needs to come from the main branch. So if I go to pipelines now, I would like to trigger two jobs, one from a feature branch and one from a main branch, and see how they behave. So let's start by actually the feature branch, which will fail according to our configurations, because it should not push it to production. So now, again, it will go through build and dev, and hopefully it will fail here, because even if I go in and approve the change with my proactive account, it will still not go through because it's being built from my feature branch and not from the main branch. This is a migration, the gate. So yeah, maybe more questions. Yes. It's taking some time. I guess if you are a developer, you're used to deploying and waiting for packages to go through, and I cannot complain. It's just a simple light storage account, and it's just going to Azure, so I can wait a couple of minutes. I hope everyone is okay with that. So
maybe just while we are waiting here, Abdel.
yeah.
So this is good with all these approval flows and stuff. And do you see any customers or any scenarios where you would not have the approval flow? I mean, it's not a good idea, but would you see any team structure where it's not possible?
Yeah, of course, definitely. Totally. It really depends on your organization. Sometimes it's actually an overhead and overkill. I would like to really use the DevOps practices and just do my feature and deploy it to production straight away. And some organizations have this attitude. But if you take, for example, customers like working as a financial sectors, banks, public sectors, they need more governance, they need more security, and it's good to know that you can still have that while you're developing and using Azure DevOps. And again, the delay is actually not much. You are just, as you see, I'm just waiting 2 minutes. But again, during those 2 minutes, somebody needs to approve me. But definitely, I see, of course, if you're building a product and you would like to see your changes and you're applying staging, maybe you would like to push to staging while to test some features out and see how the users will adapt to that. So it depends on the solution you're building and the setup you're trying to reach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good point. Thanks. I'll jump in the background again.
Thank you. So now you can see actually that my pipeline failed as expected, and that's how it failed also the first time. And you can see now, I'll go ahead and see why it failed. You can see that it's actually branch control. It failed on the branch control. So I was trying to push from production to main. Meanwhile, I think I can take questions, but I will also quickly run another pipeline to do it now from the main branch. So I'll just run pipeline and do it from main straight away. And hopefully this will actually ask me for approval and go to production. But yeah, let's maybe take more questions while we have that. Yeah, perfect. It's going. Something is working.
So maybe while we are waiting again here, so would you also see maybe some scenarios where you would need more than one approver just to stay in the approval flow here?
Well, there is a lot of ways you can approve it. I saw setups where you actually need to, of course, first of all, you need to code review. That's a pull request. It's a different type of approval, but it's happening within the team that you approve each other works and you go through each other code and make sure it's following the agreed practices. I saw a setup where we actually need an approval internally from the customer, and then we are deploying to, let's say, a monitored environment. This monitored environment is they are utilizing a partner or a provider to keep track of all the logs, all the events, and for that they also need the provider approvals to push their environments to production. So yes, sometimes definitely you also need multiple approvals. Yeah. So you can see now that this pipeline actually did go through because it's running from the main branch, and again it's waiting on my approval. So I'll just switch context and go to my other account and approve this one. And write comments and approve it. So we don't need to see that it's actually working, but the point here is that you can relate and understand that you can see that now my pipeline have reflected that 2 gates have been, or 2 checks have been passed. It's coming from main branch and from approval, and you can add more. What's nice about this is you can actually also, we talked about auditing, and in our presentation we talked that like the system admin, the king knew it all and probably had some log file somewhere where he keeping history of all the packages that he's deploying. But the good part now is that actually you don't need that. You don't need the system admin to do that anymore. And you can actually, I can see that I deployed from production during my demo today, and I can go now and go for the production pipeline and see that 1 check have passed and actually read the comment. So I can also understand why this account have approved. You can write notes and you can keep track, and you can see you have a very good picture of the DevOps pipelines. But again, if you're familiar with DevOps, this is comes out of the box and it's just great. Yeah. Yes, and my final pipeline for today is actually went through from the main. So I hope this was beneficial for everyone today, and I hope I tried to simplify the idea enough. First, you need to have the foundation established, create your SPNs, create your apps, create your service connections, make sure they have the right access types over the resource groups. What kind of access do they get? Once you have all that established, you can connect Azure DevOps to Azure through the service connection bridge or a service connection establishment. And then once you have all that and the team is ready to go to production, you can help them by easily going through a small settings in the service connection on the service connection level, and you can govern both security and gates. Yeah, I hope I wasn't too quickly, and this wraps it up. Any more questions?
Amazing, Abdel. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much.
So we have Edison, who is leaning back and actually learning here. So that's great. Thanks for that.
Maybe you have some tips for him, some resources that he can use to learn. Do you have any advice on that?
You mean me, or I thought you had some tips. Well, Microsoft Documents is actually, it have all kind of settings, and what we are showing here is very good documented, and you can always go through it and relate to, and again figure out what is their organization is like, what type of solutions they're building, and just know that you will have the features to fit into your needs.
Yeah, that is true. We are going to have some of the learning modules in a follow-up email for all of you, and maybe that's also going to be useful for Edison. But you actually appointed a very good topic there, which is learn your organization, because what works for my organization doesn't mean that you can 100% copy and paste it there. Each company has its own needs. The teams, they have their own way of working, and Azure DevOps is a tool that is going to enable you, but the whole DevOps culture, and that's a totally different topic.
Yeah, I mean, we developers, we are always excited to see our stuff live. So if it comes to us, we would like just to push it straight away. But of course, we also have to make sure there is governance around it.
Yeah, no gates, no nothing, just directly to the master brands, and then we go.
It's my code; it works.
Yeah,
that's the spirit.
That is true. But speaking of exactly this part, that it works for me. So of course I know that we don't have much of a time, but what is your advice for automation, for the testing automation? That is a very big.
Yeah. So actually, I would like to highlight also some of the cases we saw. Is as I said, as I started, I help organization build integration projects and migration projects to the cloud. And one of the things that customers actually really underestimates is integration tests. Because the moment you create a solution that consists of multiple microservices and it's going into the cloud, you need to make sure that every change you're doing is actually compatible with the rest of the solution. So definitely integration tests is something that pays off, and I have seen the value for it definitely in the project we're working at the moment, because there is a lot of changes, but we just know it works because there is some integration testing the whole solution end to end and knowing that now my changes is ready to go to production. And of course, again, in my pipelines here, there is a lot of other practices that we should have showed, but we cannot cover it all. I was just focused with governance and segregation of duties.
That's a good point, and you just invited yourself back at this.
Exactly.
So we have a question now from Jesper. So where can you see the connection to the ARM template?
How can I see the connection in the ARM template?
Yeah,
So
where can you see the connection to the ARM template?
okay, so in my code, actually, you don't use a service connection. I'm sharing desktop. Yeah, exactly. So if I go to the code, actually, I have the ARM template here in my JSON file, but then I'm using YAML, and I'm using the step called Azure Resource Manager template, which is actually taking the ARM template and pushing it to Azure, and it's utilizing. If you want to dig into my code, I don't know if it's easy to understand, but I'm passing on the service connection as a parameter. So the service connection, I have two YAML files. This one have all the variables defined and is calling the different stages by passing those variables. So for the dev environment, I'm passing the dev service connection referenced here. And if I go to my step, then it will utilize the past service connection and combine the YAML task with ARM template, and it will be taking the service connection to Azure. That quickly answer your question, I hope, but there is more to it, I guess.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. I guess we have still time for one more question. If anybody out there has a question, and I can see also here Sebastian say thank you for the.
Thank you. Yeah.
And we have Peter here that he's using Azure DevOps every day, single day. Yeah.
That's perfect. I'm happy actually working with Azure DevOps. It makes stuff easier. So I think we are lucky to have it every day. Some people don't even have that, and they do stuff manually, and it's a lot of yeah. Let's not talk
Not
about
to
that.
forget, Göran is actually clapping at you and waving. So hi, Göran. Good to see you. So Sherry, I think let's move into the late stages and wrap up. You have the learner badge.
Oh, actually, we got one question here. Maybe. So does it work with GitHub?
So you can actually integrate Azure DevOps with GitHub. So you can utilize repos from GitHub. You can maybe do push and other stuff with GitHub. I didn't work with this area, but I also know that GitHub have its own kind of pipelines, GitHub Actions, and maybe I don't know. Again, I didn't work with this area. Maybe GitHub Actions also utilize the same mechanism to connect to Azure. This is something I need to investigate. Actually, it's quite interesting.
Yes. Okay. So thank you very much, Abdul, for the nice presentation, and thanks for all of you who are watching us now. As I promised, all of you will get a learner badge, and after you will get a kudos badge as a thank you
Yay!
for speaking at the show. And yeah, just go ahead and scan the QR code, and you will get it in your wallet. If you never had it before, you need to download a wallet from Engine, which is our partner. And if you want to get to know more about this badger, you have where is my clicker? It's okay. Let's go with this. So you can go on the aka.ms/azure.heroes there is a list of different badges that we have there. For example, if you're a community hero, if you are speaking at the events and so on, you can nominate yourself or another friend to get these different badges. And I recommend you to follow us on Twitter, because every time that we have a new badger, new update and so on, we are posting it there. And of course, you can check the hashtag to see that what other people are talking about this program. And Rangway.
And as Jerry said in the beginning, we want your feedback, both for this session, and we will share it with Abdel, so he can also listen to what you say in the community, but also in general for DevShow. So what do you want to listen to? How can we improve, etc. Right? So this is your show. You can fill out the form by scanning this QR code. You can also give us feedback in the chat or on Twitter. So anything is possible. And as Sherry said in the beginning, one of you guys who fill out the form will get some swag.
We all love swags. And upcoming events. Tomorrow, we have actually Maker Show at 4 o'clock. And Goran, who was in the chat, he's also going to be the co-host for this one. And then we are going to build a robot with Pete. So if you're interested in that, see you tomorrow. And should I go this one as well? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, I talk about it everywhere. I know. So next week we are going to have the climate hackathon, and it will the kickstart is going to be on Monday. I really, 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 really want to invite you all for this climate hackathon. And the reason that I really love this event is that we put a lot of effort to bring all the challenges there that are provided by a non-profit organization, that they are tackling this biggest issue that we all have, which is climate issues. And so they are bringing the challenges, and you can bring all your skills there to help them to actually to fix these issues. And it's a 1 week, but it doesn't mean that you need to book your 1 week of work and come to this hackathon. We put it like this because then you can just work anytime that you have time during this 1 week with your teammate. And then of course it's going to be end by the end of the week, but just come along. And then if you have a team, bring your friends around, work on these challenges, or just you can just find your teammates there. So the link is there. I really hope to see you all there.
Sounds awesome.
Exactly, it is awesome. And next week, more awesomeness, and it is gonna be the same time as today. We, on request from you guys in the audience, in the community, we have brought in David to talk about SRE. So he has a long experience on SRE operations and all that stuff. I think it's almost 30 years. So this is a great opportunity to learn the basics of SRE, and if there is an appetite, we can go deeper into specific areas. So I actually promised him to ask all of you if you had any questions or specific areas you want us to go a little bit deeper into, please let us know, and you can both do that on Twitter. You can also put it in the meetup page. There is a chat field as well. You can also add your questions and topics in there, because then we can bring it forward to David already beforehand. But next week on Tuesday, normal this time, like this week. So look forward to see you there.
Yes, and that actually brings us to I need to find my clicker. So yes, so that's all for today. We have one question, because one of you actually told us last week that our sound quality is not good. So we try to improve, actually. So if you think that the sound is improved, maybe give us an approval. Otherwise, it means that we have to work on it.
Yeah, please let us know if there's anything we can do better. Thanks for bringing your knowledge to Dev Show, Abdel. It was a pleasure having you here, and thanks everybody for watching and listening in. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.